The mop in my hands had paid for her college tuition, but when Sarah's friends asked if we knew each other, she looked me straight in the eye and said no. Before we continue, like and subscribe. Tell me in comments what you'd do if denied by your child. I'd been working at Romano's restaurant for 3 years, ever since David died and left us with more bills than savings. Mrs. Chen let me work evenings after my day job at the grocery store. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on in the house David had worked so hard to buy. That Tuesday night started like any other. I was wiping down tables when I heard familiar laughter from the corner booth. My heart lifted until I saw her, Sarah, my 22-year-old daughter, sitting with 3 girls I'd never met. Designer purses hanging from their chairs, expensive phones scattered across the table. She was wearing the jacket I'd saved 4 months to buy her for Christmas. My chest swelled with pride until our eyes met across the dining room. The smile died on my face. I walked over slowly, my cleaning cart squeaking behind me. The girls were chatting about vacation plans, voices bright with careless happiness that comes from never worrying about money. I approached their table softly, trying not to interrupt. The conversation stopped. Sarah's friends looked between us, curious but polite. One blonde with perfect teeth smiled at me, asking if we knew each other, but she had no idea what I'd sacrificed to keep us afloat. Sarah's jaw tightened. She looked directly at her friend, then back at me. Her voice was steady, casual, like she was commenting on the weather. She told them she didn't know this woman. The words hit me like a physical blow. My face flushed hot, then cold. The blonde looked confused, glancing between us. Sarah's other friends shifted uncomfortably. I stood there, gripping their table edge until my knuckles went white. Sarah wouldn't look at me. She picked up her water glass like I wasn't even there, like I was invisible. I managed to whisper an apology for bothering them, my voice cracking. I turned my cart around and walked to the back room, past Carlos humming along to the radio. I locked myself in the employee bathroom and cried for exactly 3 minutes. The other customers had watched it all, a middle-aged cleaning woman being dismissed by a young girl in expensive clothes. I wondered how many other invisible people they'd seen that night. Then I washed my face and went back to work. The drive home felt endless. Every red light gave me more time to replay her words, her expression, the way she'd dismissed me like nothing. Like the woman who'd sat up with her through every fever, every heartbreak, every late-night study session was a stranger not worth acknowledging. The house was dark when I arrived. Sarah's car wasn't there. I sat in my kitchen with tea, waiting. The clock ticked loudly. Midnight came and went. 1 o'clock. 2. At 2:15, I heard her key in the front door. She walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, grabbed water from the refrigerator and turned to leave. I said her name quietly. She stopped but didn't turn around. I told her we needed to talk about tonight. She turned with hard lines I didn't recognize. When I mentioned that she'd told her friends she didn't know me, she said it was because she didn't. Not the woman who cleans restaurants for tips while her daughter has to tell people her mom works in hospitality because she's too embarrassed to say the truth. The words cut deeper than anything at the restaurant. I explained that I worked those jobs for us, for this house, for her future. She laughed without humor, asking what future. Living in this tiny house forever? Watching me work myself to death so we can barely scrape by? What happened next would change everything. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. The papers inside were already filled out, waiting for my signature. She wanted me to sell the house. David had been gone 3 years, she said. This place was just an anchor dragging us down. We could split the money, and she could finally get out of this town, start over somewhere that matters. I stared at the papers. David's house, the one he'd painted room by room on weekends, where he'd built Sarah's treehouse, where we'd planned to grow old together. I whispered that this was our home. She called it my prison, saying she wouldn't be trapped in it with me. She threw the envelope on the kitchen table. The papers scattered next to the salt and pepper shakers David had bought me for our 15th anniversary. She told me to sign them, that she was staying at Jessica's until I did. When I was ready to stop being stubborn and start being smart, I should call her. She left without another word. The front door closed with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot. I didn't touch the papers that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Sarah didn't call or text. For 2 weeks, the house felt hollow without her presence, but I couldn't bring myself to sign away the only thing David had left us. That's when I discovered my inheritance from Dad's old land, $500,000. A developer wanted the property for a shopping center. I'd been financially secure this whole time, and Sarah had no idea. More than Sarah would earn in a decade at any job. I could have paid off her student loans, bought her that Portland apartment, given her everything she wanted. Instead, I chose to give her something else. The consequence of treating love like a transaction. 3 days after I learned about the inheritance, she came home without warning. I was sitting at the kitchen table with her real estate papers, a pen in my hand. The inheritance documents were tucked safely in my bedroom drawer. She dropped her purse, saying she was starting to think I'd lost my mind completely. She sat across from me, assuming I was ready to sign. I started to tell her about the inheritance, but she interrupted. She'd already called a real estate agent who said we could get $220, maybe $250 for the house. Split 50-50, that's enough for her to put a deposit on a Portland apartment and still have money to start fresh. She'd researched everything. The neighborhood, the coffee shops, the art galleries. She'd planned her escape with the same precision other people plan weddings. Everything except where her mother would fit into this new life. She was planning my life like I wasn't even part of it. The papers were drawn up, closing in 2 weeks if I signed today. When I asked where I would live, she shrugged. I could rent something smaller or move in with Uncle Marcus. I'd figure it out. The casual way she dismissed my entire future, my security, my needs. It was like listening to a stranger. I tried again to tell her about the money, but she insisted there was enough for both of us, pushing the pen closer to my hand. She never saw the final twist coming. I looked at this young woman I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, and realized I was looking at someone I didn't recognize anymore. Someone who saw me as an obstacle, rather than the mother who'd given up everything for her. Someone who could deny knowing me to save face, then demand I sell my only security. Someone who'd calculated the exact dollar amount my entire life was worth to her. I stared at those papers and realized something had died in me that night at the restaurant. Not just my pride, my willingness to be small for someone else's comfort. This house had become the place where my daughter learned to be ashamed of me. I picked up the pen and signed my name with steady hands. Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks, thanking me and promising I wouldn't regret this. The closing happened exactly 2 weeks later. Sarah found a cash buyer eager to tear down the house and build something modern. She handled everything with unusual efficiency when she wanted something. On moving day, she rented a truck for my belongings, mentioning her Portland apartment deposit was due next week. I packed slowly, taking my time with each memory-filled object. As we loaded the last boxes, she asked where I was planning to stay tonight. When I said I'd figure something out, she pulled out 5 $20 bills from her wallet. $100 to cover her mother's immediate future. I looked at the money, at the house I'd called home for 20 years, at the daughter I'd raised to be better than this. The final text I sent her was only 7 words long. I don't need your money anymore, Sarah. I left the house keys on the kitchen counter next to the $100. I took my suitcases, my car, and the secret that would change everything. That night, I checked into a nice hotel downtown with room service and Egyptian cotton sheets. I ordered steak and wine, charged it to the room, and didn't look at the bill. For the first time in years, I felt free. Sarah texted 3 days later, asking where I was staying. I didn't respond. A week later, she called with a frustrated voicemail asking why I wasn't answering and reminding me to be responsible about finding a permanent place. The following Monday, she showed up at the grocery store looking frantic. I wasn't there. I'd quit the day after receiving the inheritance check. My former manager told her I'd said I was starting a new chapter. By month's end, I'd found a beautiful townhouse in the next state and paid cash. New car, retirement account, European trip, everything I'd dreamed about since I was Sarah's age. Sarah finally tracked down my brother and called him desperately. She was crying, saying she couldn't reach me and was worried something had happened. She kept asking where I was, saying it wasn't like me to vanish. She wanted to file a missing person report. Marcus told her I was fine but had asked for privacy while adjusting to my new circumstances. When she asked about recent family property sales, he told her the truth about the land sale, my inheritance, the fact that I'd been financially secure this whole time. She asked for my contact information. Marcus said he'd pass along that she wanted to talk, but whether I responded was up to me. She said to tell me she was sorry, that she'd made mistakes, but I was still her mother, and she loved me. I hung up and looked out my kitchen window at the mountains. Sarah never got my new address. She'd used her house sale money for an unaffordable Portland apartment, blown through everything trying to look successful on social media. According to Marcus, she eventually moved back to our hometown, sharing a cramped apartment with roommates and working at a call center. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about that restaurant night, if she remembered the look on my face when she denied knowing me, if she realized that some betrayals cut so deep they change the shape of love itself. But mostly, I didn't think about Sarah at all. The hardest part wasn't losing Sarah. It was realizing I'd raised someone who could calculate the exact worth of her mother's dignity and decide it wasn't enough. I thought about David and the life we'd built together. I thought about the woman I'd become after I stopped making myself smaller to accommodate someone else's shame. I thought about the future stretching ahead, full of possibilities I'd never dared imagine when I was working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. The money was never about money. It was about refusing to be treated as less than I was worth. Sometimes the most expensive lesson isn't the one you pay for. It's the one that costs you everything you thought you knew about love. Would you have forgiven a child who denied knowing you when it mattered most?